I'm officially the head boys track coach. This is Mrs. Meineke. She's officially the girls head track coach. We run a co-ed program here. It's a rare thing in the state of Wisconsin. Most of the programs are not co-ed. They run boys and girls track separately. We choose to do it together. So what your son or daughter will get, we'll talk about that later, is one coach for the boys and the girls in the event areas that they're working in. But don't worry, the girls and boys don't compete against each other. We go to the same meets, but they run in separate events. But we do train as a co-ed team, which I think makes for a really interesting season. Again, we're going to take you through the booklet, and that's where we're started now. So if you've got that handy, we're not going to read it to you, but we're going to point out the high points of that. That's for you to take home and to reference if you have questions about stuff, since you've got that. We'll talk a little bit about the calendar, and then we'll get you out of here. So Mrs. Meineke will start us off.
Hello everyone. As you can see on the first page of our booklet, our theme verse for this year, which we'll be basing a lot of our devotions around, comes from Corinthians 4:6, and we're going to use that message of shine on our t-shirt, and that's something we take a lot of pride in as we go from meet to meet. We actually get a lot of compliments, not only on the way our kids behave, but on the shirts that they wear, the clothing that they wear, and the example that they are. So that's something that's the major part of our program.
Your child will experience daily team devotions too. That's one of the things that we do. The kids do have a chance to lead that. The spiritual element of running is really spectacular. Running, throwing, jumping. Scripture talks a lot about exercising and the use of those gifts and talents, and we'll talk about that a lot. Track and field at Milwaukee Lutheran. A couple things for you that you might know in that general thing. There's all kinds of stuff in there. There is not a freshman team, so the kids start automatically in JV. The North Shore Conference does not have freshman track and field, so we just do JV and varsity, and I'll talk more about those levels later so that you get that. Typically, the varsity level is the best 2 or 3 athletes in that event area. It's not by age and not by experience. So one of the things is a new athlete that you have to hear very strongly from your coaching staff. If there's a freshman who's faster than a senior and they're our best runner, we will run the freshman on varsity. But if they're equal, then we look at other things, commitment and how long they've been in the program, some of those kind of things. But that's not unusual that we've had kids that are new to the program that run on varsity. But know that you're all starting at JV. That's where we begin with everybody when we begin that process. There's lots of other stuff about that on there. We do practice together, the JV and varsity all the time, and they practice co-ed, and we meet together and do all those kind of things together. There are occasions where the JV and varsity travel to different meets. That's on occasion, but again, otherwise it's a together thing. We do that as a large team. One of the things you might want to know about track and field, if you're new to our sport, which you obviously are because you're here, right now our track number without eligibility come through on some 406, we've hit 103. It's the largest sport at Milwaukee Lutheran. We do usually carry somewhere between 80 and 100 every year when we get to the end. The coaching staff is 8 right now and some part-time people, 4 of them in the building, 4 of them from outside the building, and our whole staff is returning from last year, so we have a lot of experience coming back, besides the fact that I have a lot of experience, you can tell from the gray hair. All right, moving on.
If you take a look at your booklets, we have the events. And just a couple of things to point out. We do have an indoor season. We're very blessed to have a great facility here for hosting indoor meets. It's great for Wisconsin, as the Vortex has been showing us. And our indoor season runs to about April. That doesn't mean that the kids don't practice outside. We'll get to that later. But we do only compete inside through the month of March. A couple events that are different. Inside we have the 55 high hurdles and 55 dash, which kind of take the place of the 100, even though it's a different race. That comes outdoors. Outdoors, there are a lot more events, as you can see. We add in the discus, the triple jump, 300-meter hurdles. That's about it. And we don't have pole vault.
If you don't know, we don't have pole vault here just simply because of the expense. A number of years ago, we stopped doing that. This one, next. I think so. A few things about track and fields that you know. We already have, you don't see a lot of kids here, we have 55 veterans who are coming back who already have met with me and Coach Meineke and gone through the process. So there's a number of people there. We have a number of captains we've already decided on, and those kids will be leading in. The thing that's most important to you tonight, besides going through the meeting with us and getting basic information, is that your child has the forms and everything else ready to go when they get to the start of the season. You really don't want to miss the first day because we start teaching on day 1. And that whole experience is important to have the just from the beginning and get going. And so we want to make sure that you understand that, so I'm going to give her just a few things to run through. Those of you who needed forms got a sheet tonight. If your child's been out for a sport before, really the only form we need is that you met with us, that you paid your sports fee, and then we'll talk about the t-shirt fee when we get done.
Yeah, so as you can see, there's the checklist there of everything. You don't need to have another physical if you have that. And then I guess the one extra thing, as Coach Ponko was saying, is the $10 t-shirt fee. Like I mentioned before, we all want to be unified as a team when we go places, so that's one clothing requirement that we have. We do have optional clothing, sweatshirts, sweatpants, things like that, that we'll be putting out there too. Those are not required. Don't let your kids talk you into that, but they are nice. As you can see, we're both wearing some of our stuff today.
If you go down below that, the other major thing that always makes us sad is the whole concept of eligibility. I would tell you as a parent, and your standards should be much higher than this, I hope. They've just got to be passing all their classes, so make sure they are. And so you're checking grades. I've been talking to my students in class over the last week and a half. This first 6 weeks of the second semester really tends to be a problem for some children. They've got a week and a half to take care of that. They should be in there after and before school working to make sure the grades are right, because if you start well and have your grades set up well at the 6th week, it generally carries for the rest of the semester. So as a parent, be checking on that. If you don't know how, call the school and make sure that you're online looking, because those grades are posted. Make sure that you keep moving in that direction towards being ready to participate.
Our rules are very important. The first rule, of course, if you haven't been out for a sport at the high school level before, you do practice every day. I know that's a change from grade school sports, so we're there every day at 3:30. You're expected to be on time. You're expected to be dressed properly, which we'll talk about that soon. And as far as missing goes, we don't excuse for work absences. That's one thing that we don't excuse for. The things that we do, our priority list would be a church event, a family event, or a school event. Those are the first three things, and then track comes after that. So we always communicate that with our athletes. We just talked about the grade policy. We have a little more stringent policy than our school-wide policy. Just don't fail any of your classes. And if there's questions or concerns, if you think you're borderline, then you can talk to Coach Ponko and myself. We talked about the representing well, not only when we're traveling at meets or seeing people that we're not familiar with, but also in school every day. There could be an incident in school that affects whether or not you run that night, and know that, and our athletes know that. We respect each other. We have a huge team, so we have people of all different ability levels, and that's the beauty of our team and of our sport. And that's something that we pride ourselves in, that everyone can do it. We don't have cuts. As long as everybody comes to work hard, then that's what we are excited about. And then that goes along with the last one, giving a full effort. We want everybody to come in and get better and set personal bests. And track is really good for kids. And so we want them to give their full effort too. And we not only want that, we expect that. So those are our rules.
If you go to our practice schedule, just so you know, and we'll talk about schedule a little bit more at this point. Practice starts on Monday, March 10th. Okay, so you've got that on. If you've got a copy of the schedule, you can see that. I've listed a number of things there. Practices every school day. As parents, you need to know, except on a couple of special occasions, if school is not in session, track is not in session. When we have 100 kids in the track team, when we don't have school, it's really hard to get the team here. So as a parent, you can know, it's like, say, the Monday after Easter break, we have the Monday off. Except for some individual varsity athletes, on occasion their coach will make an arrangement for them to come and do something. As general team, we don't practice. Because if school's out, we're not going to practice because it's too hard to get them all here. And so that's kind of what it is. Every day we have school, we have practice. The meets are on there so that you can see. We do have a scrimmage right away the second Tuesday with Fort Washington here. And then the next Tuesday after that, we have a duel with Wisconsin Lutheran. You can look at it. The indoor season is pretty much abbreviated. Outdoors, pretty much it works about a meet a week once we get outdoors for JV and varsity. So your child will get to participate quite a bit. Sometimes more than that, sometimes a little bit less. But that's pretty much the way it goes. A couple of things about starting again. We'll check forms and make sure all that's right, and I'll give you reminders. The sports fee actually is due the third day, or fourth day, but I will make sure that you pay it beforehand. there's something there about getting all those things taken care of. The t-shirt fee we'll talk about right away. If you can pay that right away too, that would be better. And we'll talk about clothing. Unlike other sports where there's all kinds of charges for other things, really there's only two things that are important in track and field. One is the team t-shirt, because we want to look alike, and that's the $10 fee. And the other is the training shoe, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to that point. And we don't require a certain shoe because every foot is different. We're going to talk to you about what you can at least look at for your child. Otherwise, in the calendar, if you look, if you're paging through, we start in the second week of March, we go through March, April, and in May, about the third week in May, the JV conference meet happens. I believe it's May 22nd. That's the end of the JV season. The varsity then continues by regional and sectional on. If they're a really gifted athlete, they could make it to June to the state meet, but that shows you the length of the season. For a JV kid, it's 11 weeks. For a varsity kid, it's 13. And so it's one of the shortest sports at Milwaukee Lutheran just because of the parameters the WIA puts on us, so therefore it gets done really quickly. We'll be an outdoor season and into the competition, major competitions very quickly. Yeah, during spring break, thank you for reminding me. During spring break, we do have practice. This is what we tell you. Unlike some other sports that would say you better stay in town for practice, we're telling you if you're going on vacation, we just want to know. And we'll tell you some kids things to do, but if they're in town, we'd like them here. You probably are going to want them here. Okay? Because you can get them out of the house for a couple hours. If you're in town, we want you here, and we'll practice and work on developing. If you're going on band tour, we'll leave you some stuff on band tour and try to get you to be active so when you come back, you don't lose anything. But we realize that week, we've got 2 meets that week that we're going to run actually during that time block. I believe there's 2 in there that we have to take care of. So some of those things are just products of the schedule, but we understand in that God, family, school track thing that sometimes God, family, and school, there are things go on that conflict, and we want to make sure you understand that track isn't the number 1 priority in your life. We want to be number 4. Okay, so those other things should come before them. We talked about the athletic lock rating. By the way, I can introduce one of our assistant coaches. This is Mr. Kalis. He's our boss, but he also works with us and for us. So we convinced him kind of retirement a couple of years ago. Anyway, back to the equipment stuff.
Okay, so as Coach Panko mentioned, the training shoes are by far and away the most important item for no matter what event you're in. He's going to be holding up a nice example here of the shoe. Now,
one of the things you want to look for in a training shoe, when kids, they want to get color, they want to get name, it's fit. When it goes on your foot, it should fit like a glove. You do not break in a running shoe. Okay? It should fit like a glove. It should be comfortable the way it is. It doesn't get better than that first time you put it on. And as a parent, one of the things you want to look for, that shoe takes thousands of poundings on that body a day. That's like wearing a football helmet, even though I read stuff about football helmets aren't that good. But with the knees and ankles, you want to be able to put some force on that thing and be able to feel that that's going to give for the shoe. If you need professional counseling on what to get for a shoe, I still go and get it. I've got a couple of places that I could send you to. They do give some discounts. Their stuff's not going to be really super cheap, but they're going to fit your child with a shoe that's actually good for your child to wear. And if that's something that you're really interested in finding out about, I got a couple of places I can send you that actually I've had good experience with my children going to for shoes.
Yeah, so moving on to the shoe, after the shoe. As I mentioned before, your children should be prepared for anything to happen at practice that day. That could mean going outside, and if it's a polar vortex, we'll take that into consideration. But it could also mean swimming. And we never know who's going to need to be in the pool that day. So there is no boy or girl swim team practice during the spring. We have a lifeguard on our coaching staff. We can make that last minute choice, and students should be prepared with the swimsuits. Other than that, gloves, that's a big one for me, for my kids especially, and hats, very important, especially in that March month. Oh, then also, the most important thing there at the bottom is our dress code, and this is a school-wide policy. It's not just track, so obviously no questionable messages. Exposing underwear, we mean like the long cutoffs, obviously both types of underwear. You can't have your t-shirts ripped all the way down to your sides, things like that. Always have your shirt on. We'll get on your case if you're wearing the wrong thing, that's for sure.
By the way, they have a no jewelry rule in the WIA for participating in athletics, so we enforce that in practice. So to get them used to that, because the jewelry rule is in track and field becomes an issue because girls are coming to the starting line with earrings in, and if they start the race with the earrings in, if they're one of the official, they're disqualified. There is no jewelry at all. It's clean. So we're talking about that in practice. You can't have it. So we just practice what we preach the whole time. Going on to the competition section, if you want to flip over, one of the things you want to hear, we do bus to and from every meet except when we tell you. And the when we tell you is usually varsity meets. When we go to some place nearby, and most of those kids either have parents there or drive in some way or form that they can bring and get home because the events are at different times. But for JV level meets and as a new athlete, that's what you're first looking at. We do bus to and from. And so you'll just be picking them up back here when you come back. If you do choose to pick your child up for the meet, we do ask you to sign out. They can't go home with another teenager. That doesn't work. They can go home with another adult if we have your permission to do that in some written form. But if they come up and say, can I go home with Joe because he's here and he's my friend, we're going to say no. And that's to protect you, to make sure that they're on the bus with us. Like I said before, all athletes are considered JV when they start, and then we will help determine that level thing. One of the things your child has already given us some indication. We ask about what interests they have in track and field. Eventually that decision really comes up to the coaches because we know what we need. We also know your child's gifts and talents after we've watched them run to help determine that. But it's not like we're going to take somebody who's dreamed about being a 100-meter sprinter and the first they say go run the 2 mile. There may be some coaxing there because we may see gifts and talents that would be something we want to go in that direction. But we're not going to put them in something they're totally uncomfortable with. But we may make some suggestions. And some of those suggestions have been really fruitful. We found kids to do the shot put that had never dreamed of throwing before. We've had kids do jumping events that we never thought, coming in, they were somebody who wanted to do shot put, and we tried doing a jumping event, and they were actually very effective. And so some of those things we will experiment with them a little bit as we go on. As far as meets go, one of the things, meets on school nights are kind of a special issue. We don't, basketball where you're sitting on the bench and you could go in the game, track and field a little bit different. You do know which events you're going to be in. We do sometimes save some kids as alternates for the end of the meet in case kids get hurt. School night meets, if they request to leave, there is an occasion where we'll say, yeah, you go ahead and go. We would like them to stay to the end and cheer, because if you're in the last 3 events and nobody's left there to cheer for you, it's kind of depressing. But at the same time, if you've got stuff homework-wise, we do honor the academic things, and if it's track meets sometimes do run a little bit longer, especially when we don't run them, and we don't control those factors, they can ask to go home. But if it's just a convenience thing, we ask you just try to make a way to let them stay there and see the full thing. If you've never been to a track and field meet in high school, especially indoors, if you've been to a circus any time in your life, it's a 3-ring circus. There's stuff going on all over the place. If you've got a little ADHD going on, you can really watch things all the time. There's stuff happening. Outdoors, it slows down a little bit because it's a bigger circus, but indoors, there's stuff flying, and you almost have to pay really good attention because things are going on all the time, where if you walk into the wrong area, it could be something bad for you. Anyway, going on.
Clothing seems to be my topic tonight. You can see the cost for the team-issued uniforms and warm-up jackets. We just ask you to help enforce our policy of not wearing those outside of track meets.
That's not supposed to be lost.
Yeah, right. You don't have to buy them. That's if you lose them. But we like to keep things nice, and we can do that by cutting down on the use of them. So then you can see what they're supposed to wear at meets. The 2 things I'd like to highlight are the black tights under shorts. That's our team policy. We never have to worry about matching or anything like that. And white shirt under tops. That's if it's cold outside. Some people just like to wear tights under their shorts, and that's fine. So just make sure that they're black and under the top white. And then the team clothing, as we spoke of before, we're going to do some glow-in-the-dark painting this year for our theme Shine. The design is still a work in progress, but that's going to be coming out pretty soon. We're excited about that. And then I already talked about the optional clothing. So.
Just so you know, track is cutting edge. We usually have t-shirts no one else has ever tried before. This year we are doing glow in the dark. And so when your child is at a meet at night and then they walk outside and the stuff will glow. We already worked with the t-shirt company, so that's something to be excited about. We've done UV inks, we've done all kinds of different things before. That's the new one we're going to try, so we'll see how that works. I want to spin back just to one thing in the clothing thing, not to say she missed it. Your child may start talking to you about racing shoes when we get to that point. wait on that until we're a little bit farther on. Start with the training shoe and they can race in the training shoe, that's fine. Eventually there comes a point in their development where they may want to talk about a racing shoe. Racing shoes are much lighter, there's almost no protection, they should be worn only for racing. You don't wear them for practice. Like I said, there's almost no support, that's the deal. But they do increase foot speed and things like that. There's a spike shoe, we'll talk about some of them as we go on a little bit farther. But right now, start with a good training shoe. And by the way, if you got two shoes, they both look supportive. The lighter one is always the better one to buy just because it allows some things mechanically to like to happen better. So you do look at weight, that is something to look at. We're on to the awards banquet. That's the next thing I want to talk to you about. It is on your calendar too. The awards banquet is after school is over. That's the scary thing. Maybe that's not, but it is for us sometimes because kids get into other stuff. We do it on Tuesday, June 3rd. That's the week of the state meet. So our kids going to state, we can highlight them from the sectional meet and talk about that. But we do want them all there to celebrate and realize that we've had kids miss before where their awards just got absorbed back into the athletic department. So make sure if you're going to miss, you tell us, because otherwise we just hand them back into the office and sometimes they're never picked up. And so make sure you're there. Get your award, get there, be part of the whole process. One of the things maybe you don't know about award ceremonies and maybe you think they last too long if you've ever been to one, we only talk about seniors in our award ceremony. So freshmen, sophomores, and juniors will say your name, what events you did, hand you your award, and say thanks for being out for track and field. If that seems a little rude when you got a team of 100, you would be here for 4 or 5 hours if we talked about every child. So we say make it to your senior year, then we'll talk about you. And we'll make you cry, or maybe make me cry, or whatever. The lettering process is there so that you understand what that is. Now, varsity letter, what does that mean? That doesn't mean you have to run varsity all season. Some of those kids will show up in the last month and suddenly start doing some really amazing things. We've got a whole bunch of things there. A lot of them have to do with character and attendance and those kind of things, but it does involve competing at a varsity level and scoring points there and showing us that you can be competitive at that level. And so a lot of those things, if your child wonders, we're pretty honest and brutal. We'll tell you where you're at and whether or not the letter is a reasonable option for you as we go on and what it would take to do that. You want to parent volunteers?
Last but not least, in this packet, we have our parent volunteers. We heard a little bit about that from Kim Nelson before, but we are excited that she mentioned that track meets are a great way to get these hours completed. Not only do you get to watch your child compete at the same time as you're working, but it just really helps our meets go a lot more smoothly, and you don't have to have any prior experience in certain events. We'll teach you, train you on the job, and there'll be shifts. It won't be the entire meet that you'll be doing something unless you want to. So that's what we really want to highlight. We have a few home meets, as you can see on the schedule. We need workers for both indoor and outdoor. So yeah, we'd love to have you for that.
In that, you can go all the way from being an usher. What does an usher do? In our indoor meets, you stand at the door and make sure people don't walk across the track during a race. And it's a huge responsibility because we have people walking, little kids sometimes walking on front. If one of them gets hit, that's a big deal. So make sure that all the way to actually helping us run events. And if you want to do that, we would love to train you. To get in there where the athletes are actually, you can see the sweat and do the whole thing. It's fascinating. That's the place I always want to be, is where the action is. And so if you want to get down there and really see your child in action, finish line, long jump pit, high jump area, shot put, there's a lot of places you can help, either from running the event all the way down to marking, measuring, writing, doing all those kind of things. So the more parents we have, the faster it goes. We are well known in the Milwaukee area for running quality track meets. The best officials in the southeast Wisconsin work our meets, partly because Mr. Kalis knows them and takes care of them, but partly they know when they come here it's going to be well run. And part of that is because of our parents. And they do a great job helping us do that. We're organizing to the point. And we get to host the Conference Girls Indoor Meet this year. And I'd really like to see a lot of people, even if you've got a son, come and help with that thing so we can put on a show for Milwaukee Lutheran, because the rest of the conference always appreciates when they come here because they know we're going to do our job and take care of business. So we really like your help that way. So if you want to volunteer through track, you can do your volunteer hours right with us. You don't need to do the Booster Club concession stand. If the concession stand is an option for you and you want to do that too, concessions during track meets are a big deal because everybody needs something to drink, they need something to eat, and so that thing really gets busy. And so we want to make sure that we're able to man that and take care of it.
And athletes can work for parents.
Yes, athletes also, if your parents, if you're busy and you know, athletes, if they're not on that, they can volunteer to help. So the athletes could do your hours too. So for instance, if it's a varsity meet and you're a JV athlete and you want to come and rake for us in long jump and give us 3 hours of good rating in the lunch up there, that will actually work towards the hours that your parents have to serve. Generally what we find is parents, once you get into it, the 6 hours is not something you can keep track of anymore because you're ready to go the next time your child's in a meeting because you want to be there, be down there and see what's happening. Right? A couple more things we want to do. Just we do have this sheet now that we'll pass out. Just the parents need it, not the athletes. What you do is put their name on the top. They're going to have to sign it. You can sign it. Put your email on there. They ask me for the email because I create a big email list so I can fire stuff when things happen. And so if you want to be informed, that's one thing you can do and help with. And then if you want to volunteer, check which one you would do, please, the concession stand or the meat stuff, so we can start compiling lists of people and we can take care of that. Talking to the kids especially now, the track and field interest and sign up is not closed yet, so if you've got friends that you still think are interested, we're at 103, I could go to 125, it wouldn't bother me. Okay, we might have to help get a few more volunteers out there to help, but we have our events covered pretty well, and so we could use more volunteers. Track is more fun when your team is big. It's unlike a lot of other sports. If a lot of people try out for basketball, you know some kids are going to get cut, you might not have playing time. Track is better when it's big. With all the events we have to fill with relay teams and stuff like that, it takes 40 or 50 athletes to put out a full varsity boys and girls team. And a JV boys and girls team. You have to have 40 or 50 athletes to do that. With the injuries and other commitments, that'll easily be challenged for us by the end of the season when we get that kind of stuff. Let me tell you a couple things about injuries. Track and field is not football. You don't play injured. So when your child gets hurt, if they come home and say this hurts, say, did you tell the coach? And if they say no, then either you call us, email us, or tell them to tell us, because we're not looking for it hurts a little bit. We're not. If it hurts, we want to know. Sometimes that's just the normal aches and pains of going through training. But let us, because there are some things that are signals that things are going wrong that we've had experience with, so tell them to tell us. Aches and pains are not something you run through, it's something we should know about. Sometimes we can work through that, but most of the time we got to know so we can deal with it. We have a great training staff here. Jeff, the trainer, does a great job, coordinates with us a lot. We need to know that, because small injuries become big ones really quick. And so we need to know that because the season's so short. There we go. Questions from you?